Sure. Hi, everybody. Welcome today to my podcast. I'm Monica Richardson. And today we are interviewing Alan Two Horses Eller, and he comes to us from Minnesota. He is Native American, and he has been at a very interesting, let's say, healing process or tool to help people that have problematic alcohol and drug problems. And so, without any further ado, I'd like to bring you on and welcome to my show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Nice to have you. How about we maybe tell us a little bit about your background and if you did have problematic alcohol use, what that kind of looked like. Give us a little background on yourself, where you're from, your upbringing, a little bit of that, if you'd like to.
Well, I grew up on my Native American father went to prison when I was very young. He didn't raise me. My mother was German and she married a cowboy from North Dakota. So I grew up on a horse ranch in Inver Grove Heights, Minnesota, where I learned to run a ranch. And we stayed on the farm. I didn't get to do sports in school, so I had to go home and do chores, but I really got in good shape. And then right after high school, I went to Staples Votech and got a degree in mechanical drafting. That was nothing but a party. I don't even, the friend of mine that talked me into going, I didn't even have a plan. I just took a drafting class because I had that in high school. And he didn't even graduate, but I did. And it was he just took me along.
Mhm.
And I got a job in Anoka as a detail draftsman, a beverage equipment company.
Mhm.
And because I was artistically oriented, I was drawing caricatures of my coworkers. And of course, my alcoholism was accelerating because the college days were nothing but a party.
Mhm.
I mean, surprised we even made it through. And then this job I had, there was a little Scotsman named Bill McCrell who used to come to work 2 hours after us, and he would go in a door called the Imagineering Center right next to our big cubicle where all the draftsmen were. And we did projects for the engineers who were in cubicles all around us. And Bill McCrell had his own office. And he would bring these film positives of Coke and Pepsi and 7 Up, and that was called artwork. And we had to draft blueprints for that. And it was a little more fun. So everybody kind of fought over them.
Right.
And he looked at the cartoons on my wall and he told my boss, this guy's artistic. We need to harness that. So I was told I was going to draft all his art related blueprints, which made my coworkers jealous. So he started mentoring me and I started working for him because they wanted to harness this artistic ability. And then he got sick and he was an alcoholic and he passed away
Wow.
suddenly on
Mhm.
a vacation in Jamaica. And I got called into the office and I said, my boss told me the company is not going to replace Mr. McCrell, but they're going to give you a portion of his duties. And or he had a degree in industrial design, which I just had a drafting degree. My boss said, we need to send you to school immediately to qualify for this position. So I started taking all these night classes and I inherited his office. And in the back of his office was another doorway. There was piles of artwork and stuff.
Yeah.
And our secretary started helping me organize it. And when I opened the dark room, when I opened up that back room, it was a dark room that had not been used in years. And my boss said, let's use that. So we fired it back up. And while I was cleaning it, I found empty bottles of alcohol that Mr. McCrell and the engineers would go in there and
Right.
have a drink.
Right.
Well, because I was going to night school, I was studying photography and learning how to do the graphic arts for the company. And my boss inherited this department, which used to be on the level of the engineers. So now suddenly big vendors, were taking me out to lunch and buying me drinks. And I would come back to work half drunk
Yeah.
and nobody cared. It was like part of the job. And in the evening, some of these vendors would take me out to dinner and buy me drinks, and we would stay till the bar closed. And there would be dancing, and it was just nothing but a big party. And it was
Mhm.
okay if I was intoxicated at work, which accelerated my drinking.
Right.
Then my father, who had not been involved in my life, he was from the reservation. He was very much a chronic alcoholic. He had gone to Hawaii for 8 years to hide from trouble that he had gotten into, because over in off the mainland, the laws didn't apply back then. And he
Hmm.
suddenly was able to come back. And here I had this job and a new car, and I wore a tie to work, and I had an office. And he came back to visit, and
Wow.
he started moving back. And now I started hanging out with him on weekends and meeting cousins from the reservation that I never knew I had,
Mm-hmm.
and going back to the reservation, and just that was just a constant party. I was the only one with a new car. I was driving everybody around, and my disease accelerated even further and kept accelerating. And my family knew, they knew I had this good job, and they were
Mm-hmm.
worried that everybody was worried about me because I seemed to be handling it at that point, but it was getting worse. It was like I lived to party. My weekends were all about partying. I wasn't living to live or buy a house or anything like that. I was hanging out with friends, and there was a neighborhood bar we all hung out at in Minneapolis, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And it was getting I ended up getting a contract for that company, spray painting hoods for Coca-Cola. And that
How
was
old were
some
you
big
then,
money.
Alan? How old were you at
I
this time?
was just getting towards my 30s,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
getting, I think I was just reaching my 30s. And this contract for Coca-Cola involved spray painting these plastic hoods that went on. There was a lot of money involved in that. And I had been renting a small shop on Minnehaha Avenue in Minneapolis where I was trying to make decals. I had some skills I developed. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't going very well. And other companies were offering to paint these hoods for us. And um, I put in a bid, and the engineering vice president came to me, and he got the contract for me. He said, "I'm going to go to bat for you. I think you can do this." And I got the contract, and I ended up I bid $10 a piece to paint these hoods. We built a custom paint booth in my shop, which was
Okay.
set up for it used to be a sign shop. Got to the point where I could paint 35 of these hoods an hour. So I was making $350 an hour while we were painting the hoods, and I had to rent trucks and deliver them. But I
Wow.
made $80,000 in a couple of years doing this. Then I would deliver the hoods to the company and unload them with a tie on in a rental truck, and the people in the factory were mad. They said, "Why are you doing this?" And that caused a little bit of a problem.
Mm.
And then those coworkers that were jealous of me,
Yeah.
one of them became my boss, and he said, "Why are you painting those hoods?" And I said, "I'm a vendor for the company." And he said, "But you're also in charge." As soon as I would deliver those parts, I would get a phone call and go out in the factory and inspect the parts that I just delivered. And I
Wow.
would say, "Oh, they're fine." So he said, "You can't do that anymore. You can't be in charge of those hoods that you're painting. You can't be a vendor anymore." And I asked what my opportunity for advancement was, and he said, "You're at the top. You can't go any higher." And I said, "Well, then I would like to resign from the company and continue to paint those hoods." And my boss, who happened to be one of those coworkers that resented me from before, he said, "Well, I never thought of that. Congratulations. That would be a solution. So if you want to quit your job, you can continue to paint those hoods." And I did that. And now I was just painting those hoods, and I was in my shop. I was self-employed, and my disease accelerated even further because I would get cousins of mine over, and we would paint those hoods, and we were constantly intoxicated. I mean, I was making good money painting those hoods, and we were drunk while we were doing it. And then I was making trips to the reservation, and where there was nothing but a big party, and the casinos had just started opening up, started progressing, and I lost that contract painting those hoods
Mm-hmm. Because of the
simply because
drinking,
I
or yeah, what
not so
happened?
much,
Yeah.
mostly because I told the material planner how fast I could paint them, and she said, "We're not here to make you rich," but um, she thought that I was making too much money and should drop my bid. I lost the contract, and
Whoa.
it some of the drinking did contribute to that, though. They knew when I would come in. So at that time, I was determined to move to the reservation because the casino was starting to pay what they call per capita distributions to the tribal members.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad told me, he said, "You got to move down here. Everybody's getting rich. We're getting big checks from the casino, and you got to put in your residency. You got to put your time in." So I did that. And after a year, I became an enrolled resident, and then I was getting 2,500 a month from the casino and didn't have to work for that, which everybody was partying on the res. It was
Wow.
just chaotic. And I remember going 2 weeks without eating and
Oh my
progressing
God.
into blackouts where I would
Yeah.
we would taper off and come to, and I would think, oh, I don't even remember what we did for about a week. There was a week missing in my life.
Mm.
So the disease really accelerated because of that. And my aunt on the German side of the family, who was suffering from panic attacks, which we now know are connected with diabetes. There's diabetes on that side of the family. Low blood sugar can cause those. She was seeing a therapist and being worried about me. She asked, or the therapist that she was seeing recommended a book. And so she bought the book for me and gave it to me because her therapist said, this is a really good book and it has a high success rate.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to read the book and it was really clinically written. I was sitting in a mall at that time. Because I had graphic arts experience, I had invested my casino money into a little t-shirt shack in the Mankato Mall where I was printing photo t-shirts and photo gifts.
Mm-hmm.
But I was drinking every day.
Mm.
Just like at the job, I was sipping and it was interfering with my ability. And the books talked about sugar and it talked about protein and it talked about vitamins. I didn't get much out of it. It was really hard to conduct a complete lifestyle change with on my own. So I started mixing my alcohol with water or club soda instead of pop and started taking a vitamin. And all that really did was reduce my hangovers. It helped me drink a little better.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had gotten a DWI with my dad, who showed up at the mall where I was working. And we were going to the bar together. And I got a DWI, which might be a blessing.
Yeah.
And I knew I was going to have to go to court, and I knew the judge was going to make me go to treatment. So I found out that the clinic that was involved with this book was in Minneapolis. So I enrolled into treatment there because it was nutrition based. It wasn't talk therapy. I knew it was different. And I thought, well, the book was really hard to do on my own. Maybe the clinic will be better.
Right.
And so the judge was, because I had enrolled in treatment, the judge was very lenient. He didn't really, he gave me like a $250 fine and said, I'm glad you're going to treatment. So they told me at the clinic to taper off. They said, are you drinking? I said, not much.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, then, knowing that I had enrolled in treatment, I had called them and they asked if I was still drinking, and I said, not very much. And they said, well, taper off, don't go cold turkey, and then come in on Tuesday and we'll start your program. And make sure you're off the alcohol when you come in, because they had told me they were going to administer a vitamin C infusion. And I went to the clinic and they did an intake and they sent me to the nurse's station and she put an IV in my arm with a great big bag of vitamin C, they told me. And they put me in a room with a bunch of other clients. So we just sat there and watched a movie.
Right.
And I felt it was called the C drip. And it was an intravenous vitamin C and other liquid vitamin amino acids
Yeah.
that it was they told me that this will detox the entire body, including the brain on a cellular level. And all I can tell you is that I just started feeling better. It was going through me, and each of us would have to go to the bathroom because this was about a 3 or 4 hour thing.
Wow.
And it was taking the cloudiness or the fog away. And I know it's very effective for everyone, including the hardcore drug users. But
Mm-hmm.
back then, that was the winter of '94 when I went through the program. I went through it twice. But they only gave us one back then. Then before the clinic closed, they were giving everybody one a week, and it's a 6 week program. So
Right.
they were that was really huge that could detox you so quickly. And
What's the name of the
that's the
book?
day.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't want to disclose that here if I don't have to.
Oh, okay. That's fine. All right.
I guess we could. I mean, since they closed the program, because I have my own book now, which I'll explain that later.
Okay. Then just continue on, please. Thank you.
So, anyways, that I was sitting there wondering, these people know what they're doing, uh, and I found out that this woman created this. She earned a PhD discovering the root cause of addiction, depression, and the right solutions to them because her 17-year-old son committed suicide. And she earned a
Oh.
PhD while she was building this program.
Mm.
And I was thinking to myself, why do I get to come here when so many other people are suffering? I said, this on that day when they were doing this vitamin C infusion, I knew I was going to live because I always thought alcoholism would kill me because I felt terrible when I quit drinking. I would start having tightness in my chest. I had things that, if I wasn't drinking, things really bothered me, and I had progressed to the point where I had to carry a bottle around. I used alcohol for everything. I wasn't like before when I was living to party. Now I was dependent on it, where if anything stressed me out, I had to have a drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I would just drink until I died because I was miserable without it. Everything was causing anxiety.
Mm.
And further into the program, then wasn't like treatment. This was like a class on cooking. They were teaching us how to eat differently, how to stabilize our blood sugar with diet, and then they were identifying different types of anxiety and depression that we never heard of before, like pyroluria and high histamine and things like that,
Mm.
and how to correct those imbalances. And then I learned how multidimensional it is, how people are self-medicating and don't even know it because I can't jump out of my body into yours and say, oh, that's how we're supposed to feel. So
Right.
I've probably been chemically imbalanced ever since I was a child. And I found out that I was allergic to dairy and wheat, and I didn't even know that
Mm-hmm.
because the diet that they put us on, while we're in the program, we learned to call it the reaction diet because most people's bodies don't react anymore because they're eating things that they react to and the body stops reacting. And once you go on a sugar-free, allergy-free diet and you reintroduce an allergy food, the body screams at you and says, "What'd you do that for?" And it reacts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized that I did have allergies I didn't know I had. And she said, "You're very highly allergic to wheat and dairy." She said, were you a colicky baby? Were you allergic to milk as a baby?" And I said, "I don't know." So I asked my mom. I said, "Was I a colicky baby?" And she said, "Are you kidding?" She said, "You were the fattest baby we ever saw, and you cried and cried for milk." And my great grandma would say, "Well, he's hungry. Give him some milk." While I was crying because of the lift and the crash. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
hungry.
Wow.
I was crying for because you get a lift and then a crash and in the withdrawal stage, there's and part of that huge baby was bloat. It wasn't all fat. Some of it was allergic reaction to bloating.
So were
And
you
so,
breastfed or was it formula or was it milk?
no, I was just given milk,
You were
cow's
given
milk
dairy
from the
milk
store.
from the beginning? Wow.
Yeah, I'm 64, so we're talking in the early six, like 1961, 62, 63. I was given milk.
Okay.
And I was allergic to it, being
Yeah.
a Native American baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I never knew I had these things into adulthood. I never knew anything about that. But so I started to avoid the allergy foods and eating I discovered I'm hypoglycemic, which is the beginning stage of diabetes, and that my blood
Mm-hmm.
sugar was spiking and crashing. So they put me on a high protein diet and that smoothed out. And now a lot of my anxiety was gone. But then they did some blood work and said, "Wow, you're pyrolyric." And I'm like, what's pyrolyric? And they said, "Well, when your body makes blood, it leaves a byproduct behind called cryptopyrroles, and that's normal. Your body gets rid of those in your urine, but some people have too many. And now these cryptopyrroles attach themselves to the B6 and the zinc, the vitamin and the mineral. And vitamin Bs are water soluble, so you only get them when you eat them. Your body don't store them. So if you're all these cryptopyrroles are attached to them and you're urinating them out of your body, you're going without.
Mm.
So they would do blood work and they said, well, here's your level of cryptopyrroles. And what we do now is we reintroduce B6 and zinc in a higher dose several times a day. So there's enough left over after you're eliminating your B6 and zinc so that you have some. Well, when they did this to me and provided the solution, I thought I was being, excuse my French, I thought I was being an asshole. But what I was is I was starting for the first time to be assertive because
Mm.
the anxiety was lifting.
Right.
So I was telling people how I felt about things, or instead of biting my tongue every time I felt like saying something. I was saying it, and things stopped bothering me as much, and I no longer felt that helped eliminate a big piece of why I was drinking, self-medicating.
Mm-hmm.
Then they showed me in videos how the hypoglycemia,
Mm-hmm.
once your blood sugar is corrected, they showed me how it becomes damaged. The first stage of diabetes is called hypoglycemia, and doctors argue about it, but one doctor proved it, and doctors still argue about it. But in the beginning stages, if you come from a family that has diabetic chemistry, you're predisposed. But when the body has a system for regulating your blood sugar, we never had this much sugar in our diets hundreds of years ago. Today, we have so much sugar around that the
Yeah.
system to regulate the blood sugar gets bombarded, and it's kind of fragile, and it was never meant to be handling this much sugar.
Right.
So if I drink a can of Coca-Cola or drink a can of beer, my blood sugar shoots up. Now my pancreas says, "Oh wow, your blood sugar's too high." It starts to produce insulin to bring you back down to normal.
Right.
And each time you're spiking your blood sugar and the pancreas is bringing you back down, this overworked system becomes damaged. The pancreas becomes damaged. And the first stage of damage is almost always sluggish. So your pancreas starts to pump out insulin, and it's supposed to stop when you get in the normal range, but it doesn't. Now that that damage is permanent. Once it's
Mm-hmm.
damaged, it doesn't stop in time. So now you spike your blood sugar by drinking a beer or drinking a can of Coke, and now your pancreas produces insulin to bring you down, but it doesn't stop in time, so your blood sugar goes low. Well, now cravings and shakiness will set in, and the body says, now you're low, which is very dangerous because the brain needs a steady supply of glucose or it'll
Mm-hmm.
become you can die.
Mm.
So you'll reach out for some sugar, or you'll get cravings and it'll be a sugar craving. So then if you drink another Coke, it shoots up again, and now it'll crash again and go low again. And then you'll drink something again, and then it'll shoot up again. So now every day you're on this vicious roller coaster. And if you can't get anything, say you're driving or you're at work and you can't get anything and you're going through this low blood sugar stage,
Mm-hmm.
to protect your body, your adrenal glands will kick in. If your blood sugar is low and nothing is coming in, if you don't drink anything, your adrenal glands will kick in and pull sugar from a reserve in the liver and pour that into the bloodstream to protect you. Now, if you see these certain people that are doing coffee and cigarettes all the time, because cigarettes are full of sugar and people don't know that, and coffee triggers that liver reserve, it triggers the adrenal glands. You can almost pinpoint the people that are hypoglycemic who are doing cigarettes and coffee all the time because they're getting their sugar fix. It's really easy to identify. The only way to correct that we have today is to eat a high protein, high fat diet, but good protein and good fats, because then the blood sugar will smooth out.
Mm-hmm.
What we say is we tell people stay away from sugar and food that turns to sugar fast who have this damage called hypoglycemia, because then the body will produce sugar slowly, but it'll produce it steadily. So we eat 6 small meals a day, high protein, like meat, fish, salads, and vegetables, avoiding food that turns to sugar fast, like bread, rice, pasta, and potatoes. And now your body can produce the sugar slowly. And after a couple of days, your body says, okay, there's no more spiking.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can kickstart our metabolism. And now the body starts to break down the food and send all the building blocks to where it needs to go. And the reason the depression is physical, not mental, is because during this spike and crash, that's roller coaster that's going on, there's something else that isn't getting refed. The chemicals in the brain that keep us happy and calm are called neurotransmitters, and they come from food. Well, insulin is a fat storing hormone. So when we're spiking and crashing our blood sugar every day after day after day, those chemicals aren't getting replenished.
Mm-hmm.
They're missing, they're depleted or missing. They're and when the receptor sites are open, they create a medication that fits into those receptor sites that numbs the brain so that the panic attacks and the anxiety and depression becomes numb, but the problem is still happening. We're still eating wrong and we're still causing this. The solution is to take predigested amino acids on an empty stomach and fill the chemicals back up that belong in there quickly. And then the diet keeps it that way. So it's a natural solution that was developed. And Once I was on that diet and taking the vitamins that my body needed to address the chemical imbalances I had, the desire to drink was gone. It was like I didn't need talk therapy. I didn't need to go in and dig into my childhood or my past and try to look for things that might cause a trigger when that's just a little piece of it. I
Mhm,
mean, sometimes it does help to talk about things, but
mhm,
that's when I learned the difference between treatment resistant depression, which is called the two types of depression, the basic two. There's many types fit into that category, but you got clinical depression and situational depression. Situational depression is a traumatic event. Clinical depression is when these chemicals are missing. Now, if you have clinical depression and a situation happens, it hits you harder because there's nothing in there. The chemicals that keep
mhm,
us calm and happy aren't there. So our problems are blown out of proportion. I've seen clients come into the program that were fragile because these chemicals are missing and they felt like the world was coming to an end because their electric bill was overdue. Once we treated them with nutrition
mhm.
and strengthened the mind with the chemicals that belong in there and
Right.
stabilized their blood sugar, they would say, I don't know why that bothered me so bad. It doesn't bother me anymore.
Wow. So this program was a long time ago. Let me ask you this: were you ever exposed to 12-step programs? Like, did that
Oh,
happen?
yes.
Yeah.
I refused to go to it. I mean, even before I went to, I just knew that it was humiliating and it wasn't really going to help anything because talking, if you understand clinical depression and situational depression, talk therapy can only help you with situational depression and that heals by itself over
Hmm.
time. So sometimes when somebody has clinical depression, which almost everybody does, because everybody in this country is hypoglycemic, my daughter was when she was 12, everybody has some level of physical depression, which means that their problems are bothering them more than other people because these chemicals in the brain are not there. Um, it makes it a little easier to understand why it takes longer to heal an event. Something traumatic happens and it hits us like a ton of bricks.
Hmm.
And some people, you can look at identical twin sisters. One of them has the clinical depression, one doesn't. And both of them lose a family member, and one falls to pieces, and the other one is strong about. I mean, it's
Hmm.
still affecting her, but not to the point that the other. We've seen this happen, and it makes more sense why some things bother some people and other people they handle it better. They
Yeah, yeah. I just saw a woman that was on an interview with another woman, and she was talking. Her She just released a book called "I Drank Myself Sober." So she actually, and she had a twin sister who never had a problem with any alcohol, and then she said that, and she used naltrexone to like slowly, like she used it and drank and continued to drink until she didn't want any more. But the point I'm saying is in connection with there was a twin, she had a twin, and her twin never had an issue. So how long did you get involved in this program? Like, did you work there? You know, what evolved that was so long ago? And so how did you spend, the next, I would say, decades around this issue, knowing that what you told me that there was a lot of issues with people on the reservation and partying and lots of drinking and stuff.
well, I'm glad you asked that because when I was going through the program, the doctor who originated the program, the director, she was helping me with my. She was one of my counselors, and she was the director of the program. She asked me what reservation I was from, and she
Right.
said, she said, I sympathize with your people because you suffer the most from alcoholism and diabetes. She said, you're the last culture to be exposed to alcohol and sugar. And she said, I've given lectures on a reservation before, and I asked how many diabetics were in the room, and the whole room raised their hand. And she said, I was
Wow.
in shock because she said, you guys suffer the most from alcoholism and diabetes, and they go hand in hand. And she said, would you like to sit on the board of directors and be my Native American spokesperson? Because she said, I don't see a lot of Native Americans come through my program. And I thought that maybe if we incorporated a sweat lodge ceremony into the program, that more would come. And she said, would you research the sweat lodge? And I said, absolutely. And during the course of the year, I sat on the board of directors for 26 years.
Wow.
And during the course of that, I earned a pipe. The chanupa is the prayer pipe, and I earned the right to run sweats. And we never did incorporate a sweat lodge into her program, but I sat on the board for all those years up until she passed away, and her son and daughter shut the program down.
Mm, that's too
Matter of
bad.
fact, and I worked there on several occasions for. I became one of the biochemical counselors, and the clinic had a very high success rate. Now, she also wrote a book to help people treat themselves at home with a detox formula and a book, but that did not have the success rate the clinic had. The book had much lower success rate because you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the one who shipped the vitamins out, and I answered the phone for those at-home clients.
Right.
And the phone was not ringing off the hook, but it there's no way to really pinpoint what the success rate the book developed. But my aunt bought me the book, and it didn't did it was very difficult. And I knew over time, as being involved and watching the clients come and go like I
Yeah.
had come and gone,
Yeah.
that a lot of this was the only treatment center I've ever seen where they didn't want to go home because they were
Wow.
working on various chemical imbalances. They
How, how
stayed longer on their own dime.
how long did they stay for?
Well, it's a 6 week program. The
Okay.
first week was to assess the damage. And because the diet Now, the diet hypoglycemia, when you put people on a diet, for some people, that's all they need because they're only hypoglycemic. And once their
Mm-hmm.
blood sugar is stable, but some people, they get on the diet and they feel a lot better, but there's still a few things going on. And then we had a questionnaire that they would look over and that would pinpoint at these other chemical imbalances that were causing self-medicating, like high histamine, low histamine, pyroluria, hypothyroidism, candida, and others.
Mm.
And then we would have to adjust their vitamins to the formula. We would have to take the formula for that chemical imbalance and the formula for the maintenance plan. See, we would put people on a detox formula when they first came in the program, and then it would lower to a maintenance formula. Then we would blend the new formula for their chemical imbalance with the maintenance formula, make sure they're not taking too much of any one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would address any chemical imbalances that they had after the diet, and then they were home free. So sometimes it took a little longer than 6 weeks. And I was working there in 2016 when Mark came to me, her son, and he was in his 60s at that point. And he said, Al, I know you want to do something with this, and my mom is not doing good. And I'm not staying in here like she did. He said, if you come up with $1 million, you can buy the program and we'll train you in. I was already trained in, but he meant the business end of it, doing
Right.
intakes and all that.
Yeah.
And I just thought, there's no way I can come up with $1 million. So in the meantime, they did shut it down.
Wow.
And
In
I
2016.
just, not too long after that.
Yeah.
And so then I said to myself, well, I formed a nonprofit to try to help them stay open, but they shut it down anyways. And that's when I decided, well, I know how to do my portion of what I did for the clinic. I handled the at home clients, I
Right.
helped them through it at home. So now what I'm going to do, and Mark told me, he said, if you want to take our book and turn it into a classroom, that's okay with me. And then his sister, Molly had 51% controlling interest, and she gave me in writing permission to carry on because she
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do it anymore either. So I took the book and turned it into an online classroom so that I can give my at-home clients more than a book. I'm going to walk them through
Mm-hmm.
a complete lifestyle change because when we graduated the program and went home, there wasn't anything for us. There was We had to start changing what we ate. We had to tweak recipes, count carbs. We had to. It's hard to go out to a restaurant and eat and when you go home on your own and you've got to do this, it was hard with my family. Like I would go to my aunt and uncles to eat, and they would say, "I don't know what you can have," and I'd say, "Don't worry about it. I'll just eat what I can," and I would have to carry things with me like beef jerky.
Uh-huh.
This is a very good beef jerky.
Uh-huh.
There's not a lot of chemicals in it. It's just
No
there's
man's
no
land.
sugar in it, It's
Yeah.
just dried meat and there's not a lot of sugar. So it was really hard to find things that we could
Yeah.
have. If you're driving down the highway and you stop at a gas station, there's not much in there that you can have, like hard boiled eggs, veggie sticks, celery and carrot sticks. You got to watch the carrots because they're like a potato.
Hmm.
So we would
Interesting.
get six
Yeah.
weeks. 6 weeks didn't even feel like enough, even though the clinic had such a high success rate. The at home clients need more. They need a coach.
Yeah.
And I've
Coaching.
been doing this 30 years. For 30 years, I've been doing it myself. And I've noticed that my health is unbelievably improved by stabilizing my blood sugar and taking mega doses of vitamins. My
Hmm.
family, who was worried about me, are all gone. And I'm the only one left.
Whoa. You mean they've all passed? Wow.
They all had diabetes. My
Sorry.
mom was a smoker. My younger sister, who
Yeah.
she drank, we all partied, but they were worried. They were all worried about me, and they're all gone. I'm the only one left, just my son and I.
That's sad. Were they young? Like, did they die in their 60s?
My
Like,
mom died at 57.
yeah, that's young.
My grandma died at 75, and she was diabetic. We didn't
Yeah.
have a big family, and my younger sister died at 44.
Wow. That's young. And I want to just point out something that you were talking about assertiveness with you. Lance Doty's, who wrote The Sober Truth. Do you know that book?
No, I
Lance
don't.
Doty's. So he was at, I think, Mass General back on the East Coast. He's from here, but as he left when he retired, he wrote this book. It's a pretty good book about. He really disliked AA, but AA is infested even on in those places, in these big institutions. And he talked about assertiveness being an issue that most of the time when he's dealing with somebody with problematic alcohol use, that they really were not assertive. They didn't know how to speak up for themselves. They didn't have to stand up for themselves. So even though you come from a really different point of view than he did, then there was that similarity, and I could see that in people that I knew. And I wanted to ask you this. I know that for some people, it's no big deal to call it alcoholism. And I really, because I was in AA for so long, really despise the word and so don't use it. But so did it seem like maybe because you weren't ever in AA or 12 step, that for you, it's
I've
like
been to AA. I've been to 12 steps.
used it, but you were smart. I mean, look, I mean, I could tell by when I asked you that you saw through it right away. You were young, you saw through
Well,
it.
I don't know what it was, but I knew how I felt. I knew
Yeah.
that. But are you able to navigate to my website while we're doing this? Do you have a
Um,
laptop there or anything?
I do. I mean, we're on it. I
Let me
don't.
grab my. I wanted to read something to you. Well, alcohol is proven to be a physical disease of the not in the mind. I mean, the mind is affected, but I wanted to read something to you about a
Okay,
judge.
go ahead.
Can I grab my phone?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this sort of gives us this is my website called Root Cause Renew,
Okay. Yeah, we'll put a
and
link down below.
this
Yeah.
helps give a I've got a section on here called the proof, and the reason I put this in there is because this helps people understand the disease, how misunderstood it is, and it makes
Mm-hmm.
more sense as people are exposed. But William Mayer, MD, former chief of the U.S. Drug, Alcohol Abuse, and Mental Health Administration, speaks of alcoholism as a disease genetically determined, clearly progressive. We can predict its course, even though the speed of its course may vary from person to person. It is ultimately fatal. It leads to a predictable physical deterioration and often some mental impairment, and it occurs in people who have no discernible previous psychological or emotional disorders. Then it goes on. In 1982, the question of whether alcoholism is a physical or mental disorder was the subject of a major courtroom battle. The case pitted the federal government against Granville House, an alcoholism treatment center in Minneapolis that treats many uninsured clients who receive government disability funding. The government's position was that since the alcoholism was classified officially as a mental disorder, Medicare could rightly refuse to reimburse Granville House for the treatment it provided. The government's star witness was a psychiatrist, Dr. Robert Spitzer, who defended the view of alcoholism as a psychological disorder, even though he recognized that there exists no effective psychiatric treatment. Two former presidents of the American Society of Addiction Medicine, LeClaire Bissell, MD, and Maxwell Wiseman, MD, testified in support of the concept of alcoholism as a physiological disease. In summing up their testimony, Federal Judge Miles Lord noted that they had described the utter failure of treatment modalities based on defining, diagnosing, and treating alcoholism as a mental disease. In his decision, Judge Lord noted that the American Medical Association had classified alcoholism as a physical disease in 1957, and here's an excerpt from his opinion. He said, alcoholism is the third leading cause of death in the United States. This court is unaware of any mental illness that so directly and persistently results in disease of the body. Disease of the body, if severe and continuing, will in time affect the mind. The sole fact that a condition is accompanied by abnormal behavior does not justify its classification as mental. The great bulk of the testimony supports the conclusion that alcoholism is a diagnosis of a primary disease. It cannot be understood as a secondary effect of any other problems. The disease is predominantly physical as opposed to mental in nature. It is therefore the court's conclusion that the federal government's classification of alcoholism and other forms of chemical dependency as mental disorders is arbitrary and capricious. And so he ruled in favor of the nutrition clinic and forced the government to pay for it.
Wow. And that was in
That was
90,
that was in 1982,
19.
I believe.
Wow.
That was in 1981, the case. And so here, Judge Miles Lord was famous. He was known to be fair on many issues, including environmental issues. He was a champion for the environment and for what he thought was doing right.
Right.
And he did his research at our clinic. He came to our clinic to do the research, and that's
Really?
when
Uh-huh.
that's when we can prove that alcoholism is in the liver, not in the mind, by the way alcohol breaks down, by the way the liver breaks alcohol down.
But don't you think you have to be a very hard drinker to really have that happening rather than there being a lot of young people that are being labeled that when there is not that issue yet?
Well, the problem is you don't become an alcoholic, you're born one.
Oh God,
And that's
I don't
confusing.
believe that, but we can,
It's
I
absolutely true,
digress.
and it's easy to prove.
Go
It's
ahead.
very easy to
And
prove.
I just want to say to my listeners, so at this point, in the comments below, I would like to ask people to ask questions to Alan that he could, answer himself to on YouTube. This is where this is going to go, as well to myself, and your opinion on this point that obviously Alan and I will disagree. And I do like to have what is it, a dissenting, well, not dissenting voices, but the ability that two human beings can sit here and disagree and still have a nice conversation. So I do think it's important that if there is disagreement, which I do disagree with that, but you're here, as my guest, and I'm listening to you, so that the people who follow me and who are here, I'd like to know their opinion as well, and if they have any questions for you. So with that, go ahead, let it roll.
Did you want me to offer my explanation?
Yes, please do.
Yes. Well, the problem is in how the liver breaks down alcohol. See, alcohol itself doesn't get you drunk. It makes you sleepy and a little bit sick to your stomach until the liver breaks it down into something similar to morphine called acetaldehyde. Now, the people who have had thousands of years to adapt, their liver has learned to protect them from this
Mm,
substance called. So, say I go to a bar with someone who's not an alcoholic, and so this person and I go to a bar and we're both drinking beer. And while he's a non-alcoholic, I'm an alcoholic. Now, when I'm drinking the beer's getting into my stomach and getting into my bloodstream. As soon as the alcohol reaches my liver, the liver goes to work breaking it down into acetaldehyde. Now, my liver, having not adapted, breaks it down very quickly into acetaldehyde. Now, it has to break this down into acetic acid to get rid of it,
mhm.
and it does that very slowly. Now, this acetaldehyde is like morphine. It's a poison, but it'll get you high. Now, since my liver is breaking the alcohol down into acetaldehyde very quickly, it can't get rid of it very fast. It has to break it down into acetic acid to get rid of it. So this acetaldehyde is building up in the liver and getting back into my bloodstream. If this substance reaches your brain and muscles, you're going to get euphoric.
Mm.
I mean, really feeling great and feeling sociable. Now,
Hmm.
the non alcoholic person whose liver has had up to 7,000 years to adapt, their liver says the alcohol comes into the bloodstream. Their liver goes to work breaking it down into acetaldehyde, but their liver has learned that this stuff is dangerous. So it breaks the alcohol down into acetaldehyde very slowly. Then it goes to work breaking that down into acetic acid very quickly. So the liver can keep up. It can break it down and eliminate it faster than it can get passed into the bloodstream. And this is a scientific fact. This is
Now,
why Judge Miles Lord ruled that it's a
right,
physical disease, not a mental. So
right, right.
every time acetaldehyde gets into your bloodstream and reaches the brain and muscles, they're physically becoming addicted. So every time you drink, it progresses. You're slowly becoming more addicted, but it's physical, not mental.
Don't you have any help from your German side? Didn't that kick in with all the beer
Well,
drinking that did?
my mother was German and she was an alcoholic,
Right.
but
So
not as
she,
bad as my dad.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I do think I've seen like, and I don't know like the scientific words like you do, but when I went to Japan, I went there as a singer, and man, they could not handle their booze.
If
Like,
you've seen full-blooded Native Americans, it's like scary.
yeah, it's
Scary.
very, very similar, right? That
They're the last
super,
culture to be exposed, so they have no tolerance. And they just,
yeah.
as we're drinking on the reservation with the full bloods, the half breeds, and the quarter breeds, it's really easy to distinguish how they're handling it. It's the full bloods have no, they have no, it's surprising they even survive because they lose it.
Did
They
you use
they
plant-based
and
med?
we
Oh,
fill
sorry.
the
Good.
and we fill the jail. We're the lowest per capita population in the country, but we have more people in prison because of the problem with alcoholism that affects the different blood quantums. They have no tolerance to their behavior either.
Really? And you
What
have the
happens is
largest
we get in a
population?
hell of a lot. We're a smallest population, but we fill the prisons. We're one of the highest populations in prison and jail.
Wow. And so is there something in jail that's probably not, right? They probably don't have a C drip in some room or
Well,
lousy food in prison and
ironically, I'm talking to a guy right now that's trying to treat addiction in prison, and he heard about my program,
yeah.
and he's interested in seeing what we can do.
In what state?
Um,
In
I'm
your
not
state
sure
or
yet. On
yeah.
my nonprofit organization, there's an architect on my board that has made the connection, and we're still playing phone tag. He's a busy guy. The guy that I'm supposed to talk to just got back from Europe on vacation, but he wants to know more. But the conflict of interest is, see, whatever he's doing in prison is a profitable business for him. He's treating with the addicted clients, but I'm not sure if my program will be of interest because once they recover, there's no money in it.
Right. What about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the new plan there to do different things? Have you approached them? Have
The architect on my board is going to help me see about where the grant, because I read up on that
yeah,
after you mentioned it, and
yeah, $100 million.
he's got like $800 million allocated for treatment and homelessness, and
Whoa.
like 500 million is supposed to be targeted towards treatment centers, and he wants to target a lot of faith-based treatment centers, and that's where I'd like to. RFK seems easy to approach.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get a direct ear with him and explain why this program works and how it addresses the physical component and the difference between the two types of depression, maybe he would take a stronger interest in treatment that works.
I think that more than anybody else, and you can just try directly. I mean, I have friends who created the Freedom Model, and they wrote him a letter and sent their book, and uh, and they have a completely different approach than you. But I think that I would pursue something. I mean, I would. You really worked at this for so long, and your story. It's not just your story. What do they call it when it's like anecdotal? It's like, okay, this was happened to me. Well, that you're one person. Well, where's the study? but you were there for 3 decades, right? Watching it.
Yes.
And especially if you have a population like Native Americans, where maybe it could really be focused there first. And there's reservations all over the country, some doing better than others. The ones that do really badly are the ones where there's all that drinking and partying, you
Well,
know?
there's also the meth epidemics on reservations, and there's a high suicide rate. And
Yeah.
I
So,
haven't begun to introduce my program to them yet, but we're ready to.
yeah.
My
So,
non hopefully my nonprofit can provide it to the reservations very economically because some of the large reservations are like a third world country. There's absolutely no money.
wow. Yeah.
So it's not about the money, it's about the need. And that's why I have a 501c3, and hopefully we can figure out a way to provide it.
You know who Peter Sentinella is?
No, I
He,
don't.
I'll send you a link. He's a YouTuber, and he's gone to many reservations. He just goes randomly. It's more like a vlog where you
Oh,
follow him around.
I think I've seen him. He
He's
interviewed
really
some medicine
cool.
men, didn't he?
Say that again.
I think he interviewed some spiritual leaders, some medicine men, what we call spiritual healers.
But I think he would come to you, and you would take him and walk around with. He really is interesting. He likes to find interesting characters and people that are telling stories that no one's really telling, and he really has a huge following. But he shoots really well. His stuff is, it's actually really, yeah. I would just, I'll send you the link. I want to ask you about plant-based medicines. So when you were growing up and you were on the reservation, or when you talk about this, are people using cannabis? They're using, we talked a little bit about psilocybin. Uh, are there plant-based medicines that people are using?
Well, yeah, and I'm a pipe carrier myself, which we say as an interpreter. I run sweat lodges, which is our basic ceremony. And there are plant-based medicines, and we have a Pejutawi Chasha, which is a herb man, or a Pejutawi, which is a herb woman. And they usually enter a ceremony and talk to the spirits, and the spirits will tell them what plants to use. Because the
Mm,
plants, there's so many. We used to have plant lore, and now if we're going to use a medicine, it's specific to the person.
well,
And so we're not allowed to write down our how we run a ceremony, but usually a Pejutawi Chasha or a Pejutawi an herb man or an herb woman would come into a ceremony and get the prescription from the spirits to administer to the sick person.
wow. How many medicines? Like, are there some that I don't even, never even heard of? Like, right?
Well, yeah, well, that's specifically, but an herb person, an herb man or an herb woman, they know the plants,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes they wouldn't know exactly how to administer it. And that would be why they would come into a sweat lodge and get the answer. Uh,
You know, I,
or they may have to combine, somebody has a certain sickness, they may have to combine plants. So a lot of times they would come to ceremony. But in a lot of regular cases, they can do it on their own. They don't need to come to ceremony just to administer a plant. But if it's critical, if it's really a terminal disease, we would send them to a medicine man, a Wichashawa Khan. The sweat lodge is a spiritual cleansing. We come in there just for cleansing and for guidance. The
mm-hmm,
sweat lodge is for guidance, protection, and small healings, what we call band-aids.
mm-hmm.
But if someone is really sick, we send them to a medicine man and he'll take them into a ceremony called a lawampe, where we darken a room and the spirits will come in and doctor you.
Wow, interesting. Do you feel like your culture has had a renaissance and it's more appreciated, and your culture too with your people? Like, do you feel that that's improved, like with the Hawaiian culture? So I'll just back this up with saying when I lived there, and I went there in the mid 70s, that there really wasn't, but was a huge fight to bring that back and teach the Hawaiian language and to have the children learn it and all that stuff. And it made a turn. And I still, have I think a big fight. But did that happen? Do you think that's happened with your people?
Well, the problem was the government made it illegal to run our ceremonies. It was illegal. The only time they make something illegal is when they're afraid of it,
Right.
because we used it in battle. Our spiritual warriors,
Yeah.
the truth is we were winning that war,
Yeah.
and we were poisoned
I'm sure
because we
you.
were
Yeah.
winning. Smallpox infested blankets was the solution, and starvation. But
Mm-hmm.
because they were afraid of our ceremonies, because our warriors were scary. They had spiritual protection in battle. They
Yeah.
made our ceremonies illegal, and we kept them alive in secret. So we
Are they
never
still
lost them.
illegal? Like, I mean, did they ever get
No,
undone?
Jimmy Carter fixed that in I think it was 74. He made them legal again. So we never really lost them. We always had them, but we don't because if you have earned the right to call spirit into a ceremony, we're not allowed to write it down. It's not in books. It's
Mm,
earned, not learned. It's earned, not learned. So if we write
mm,
it into a book, then anybody can copy it and that will go bad because the spirits won't come. The good spirits won't come. So we don't
yeah.
teach it. So since we don't teach it, and because of our ego, we don't let people know we can do this. Nobody knows what we can do. So we don't broadcast it. We don't advertise it. We don't have a price list.
Yeah.
It's kept very humble and very quiet. Uh, it's like a spiritual invitation. If you come to a sweat lodge, anybody is welcome to come and pray,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't talk about it much.
Very interesting. Well, I think it's fascinating. I find anything that can help people, especially like in this way, uh, even if maybe philosophically we don't agree on 100% on all of it, I definitely believe that. So it's interesting that I learned about vitamin C a long time ago when there was a doctor doing studies on massive doses of vitamin C, and then he got cancer. The guy was doing the
Megadosing.
yeah, and he was doing that. That was in the 80s. And myself and my ex-husband, and I still have vitamin C powder. And if any, I've been around a lot of, I live in LA, there's a lot of germs, and I take that vitamin C powder and have been doing it now for, I don't know, it would be like
Well,
40
that's
years.
different. Vitamin therapy we can teach. It's our spiritual ceremonies we can't teach. But
Right, right.
there
No,
used to be there
yeah, go
used to
ahead.
be vitamins. The food supply used to be really healthy, and it's not anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why we have to take vitamins because the food is not nutritious.
Yeah, when you taste my son, he's like way out near Thousand Oaks, and they grew oranges. Like they had a little tree in their little backyard, and those oranges they ripened. They were all tree ripened, and my grandson and I were pulling them off, and we brought them in the house, and man, the juice that came out of those orange was like unbelievable. I haven't had an orange from a store that tasted like that in years. But so we thought we'd wrap up. But in wrapping up, first of all, I want to thank you so much for reaching out, and I'd like to just put a little plug out to Kirsten, sobriety bestie, who that's how you found me, right? One of her videos, or
No,
is
I
that it?
just found you on. I don't know. I saw you on Facebook, and I read that you. Yeah, I did see you interviewing someone else, and then I reached
Oh,
out.
okay. So maybe it was because I was pretty quiet for quite a few years with the 2020 stuff that happened. But so for reaching out though, because I find that there's people that are so desperate for help. And I'll see these other groups, like there's a mom group on Facebook where their kids are dying, their adult children are dying. And they send them off to AA rehabs and they die there. And so if there's
Yeah, they
someone
die
comes to me with something
in
new, and this is not even new, right? It just like 30 years old, 35 years old. But to me,
40.
like,
In
yeah,
40 years, we only
40
saw
years.
one death, and it was a suicide. And the statistics are in a 12-step program. In the first year, they usually see about a 30% stability of people still sober. In the second year, it quickly drops to 10, and in the third year to 5% of their clients are still sober.
Right.
With our nutrition-based program, 3 years after our program, 74% of our clients were still sober.
Wow, it's good. And so you have a website. Tell everybody where your website. We can link it
It's
down below.
simply it's simply rootcauserenew.com.
Okay. And well, I people can find you on that. And are you on any social media?
Not yet, but I'm gonna start a podcast.
All right, good. Was
Got
it
some
not?
blogs going on. I have some
Okay.
blogs on my website.
Okay. Are you going to do the podcast on YouTube? So will it be a
I don't
video?
know. Yeah, that would be a good idea. I shoot video here, so wouldn't
Yeah.
that
I
would be
think
the
it'd be
right way
great.
to do it.
Everybody's doing it. I mean, there's some new Podbeam is just for audio, but anyway, I think it'd be great that you could start your own podcast. And well, I want to thank you thank you for coming on my podcast and educating me about something that can really help people, something that's helped you. And any
Well, I
other?
appreciate
You're
having me.
welcome. You're welcome. Is there any last parting words you want to say?
Um, all I can say is that the proof's in the results, and that uh, what I noticed was that it's such an investment in. I have no fear of disease. The things I had to do to stabilize my alcoholism and my anxiety
Mm-hmm.
made me healthy. At 64, I've never had any health issues.
Well,
And I considered it an investment in my life because I'm not afraid of cancer or heart disease. I know where I'm at. I know what I'm eating and what it's doing to my body and what it's doing for my brain. And I'm in charge. I wanted to call it take charge recovery because I'm in charge of my health. And getting sick is, when you get to the point where you're in charge of your health, getting sick is almost a decision.
interesting. Okay. Well, there we go. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank
We'll see you on the next podcast.